Hi, my name is Monica Ibacache. I'm the executive director of Beyond Organic Design, and I'm here at the Sustainable Solar Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to the Sustainable Solar Podcast. My name is Idiris. I'm your founder and host. In today's show, we have an amazing guest, Miss Monica Ibacache. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on today's show. And, as we go ahead and get started with everything, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, my name is Monica Ibacache. I founded Beyond Organic Design, which is my nonprofit, in 2015. And then we added a consulting arm in 2020 when the schools closed because we couldn't be in the schools. So our mission is to prepare children, youth, and communities to inherit the earth. The idea is that in this time of climate disruption, we're just not ready. And there's ways that we can get ready. And that's what our educational mission is founded on.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Amazing. How long have you been in this industry?
So I've been doing this. I've been teaching since 2009. And then I started the nonprofit, 7-8 years ago. And then, the consulting company about 2 years ago.
Nice. Mm-hmm. How exactly did you get into this career? What inspired you to move into this career?
Well, I think that a long time ago, probably about 20 years ago, I was living in the Pacific Northwest, specifically Alaska. Oh, wow. And I had an opportunity because I had come to Alaska from New York City, I had an opportunity to grow a garden, something that I hadn't done since I was a little kid in Chile, living with my grandparents. So I was excited about this, and I started growing. And one of the things that struck me immediately was how good my lettuce tasted. And I said, why does my lettuce taste so good? I thought I didn't like lettuce.
Wow. Okay.
But it was because I didn't like lettuce grown on, shipped 1,500 miles. But when you're growing it yourself and then you eat it, it makes sense. It tastes good. It's crunchy. It has a lot of flavor. I was so surprised. And then I said, why does my lettuce taste so good? And then the stuff I've been eating doesn't. So that started me. I went down the rabbit hole. And when I came out of it, I was back in New York City, and I was really missing my garden. And I wanted to figure out, how can I feel connected to nature, feel connected to these cycles, be involved in growing food so that I can stay here. And that was my thing. I wanted to stay in New York, but I needed to figure out a way to be able to have these things in my life. And that led me to permaculture design.
Wow. I have a slightly off-topic question. Sure. You said your lettuce tastes very different, and it was good.
Oh, yeah, it's really good.
I'm thinking in my head, is how much % of the lettuce is actually water?
Most of it. Most of it.
About 75% or more, really?
Probably, at least.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure, especially with lettuce.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's very, very, very full of water.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
It's really good.
And so what surprised you most about the current industry that you're in?
I think that for me, because I was coming from permaculture design, and permaculture is a design system. And it's based on how nature designs itself, because nature has a method to its madness. And when I first started studying it, I learned a lot about food growing, because that's how I came into this, because of my love of growing food. And what surprised me most about my industry and doing in the world of environmental education, if you want to call it that, the very big, large umbrella of sustainability and environmental education, was that a lot of what I was seeing was not connecting the dots between ecology, agriculture, sustainability. Those weren't really getting connected. And I thought that we had something to offer there, a way to make it seem more relevant.
And let me ask, did you say you grew up in Chile?
Yeah, so I was born in Chile.
Okay.
We moved here when I was 7 years old.
Nice.
I grew up in the southeastern part of the U.S. Nice. I know you can tell because I have a big old Southern accent. I know. I left 30 years ago. So anyway, I love the South, though. It's beautiful. And then I came to New York City. So when I was telling you before, when we were talking, that I left here to go to Alaska, and I was in Alaska for 8 years, and that I had a very different experience, clearly, and a really foundational experience. I learned how healing and regenerative and like how good it was for me to spend time in nature, how much better it made me feel.
Wow.
I kind of lost that.
And I just find it very interesting that you grew up in Chile. You actually lived in Alaska for some time, and now in New York. So a very like a wide variety of living experiences and lifestyles, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Talk a little bit more about that if you don't mind.
No, I feel like I'm very malleable and I can have fun anywhere. And that has helped me greatly. I love living in New York City. I joke and say it's because I don't know how to drive, but it's more than that. I love the energy. I love the people. I love that. For me, it feels actually very sustainable to live in a big city. The way that transportation works, the way that you heat an entire building instead of a single house. There's lots of aspects of city living that are actually really sustainable.
Yeah, and I think that's something to really dig into because unfortunately, in my experience, dealing with a lot of people in the city, homeowners in the city, a lot of people really don't think that the city is a prime place to be sustainable. If you could just elaborate a little bit more about that as far as how the city can be sustainable. All of the different ways and avenues that we can actually take advantage of being sustainable.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that's an amazing question, and I think that there's so much that we can do, and to me, it makes sense that a city's sustainable because if you think about it, let's say there's 8 million people in New York City. What if they all had cars? You know how horrible the air would be if they all had cars. So just take the subway. Just public transportation is a huge thing. Like I mentioned before, the heating, right? To be able to heat a building, it's not as complex as one might think. And when you're thinking about heating, 8 million individual houses, that's just a lot more. So for me, I feel that city living is when people are bringing food in, like think about what kinds of ways we use energy and how everything has to be brought in, but it's brought in trailer trucks. There's a lot of them. And then they come into the grocery store, but all of us just like walk there. It's not like we're all driving to the grocery store. So I think that it can be a very concentrated, sustainable ecosystem. I look at things as ecosystems. Permaculture is ecosystem design. So.
All right, guys. So we're going to take a quick break from the Sustainable Solar Podcast, and we'll be right back with you in a few.
For me, the panels look beautiful. I feel like I fit in now because so many houses in the neighborhood have them. So I'm kind of a part of the cool team now. So the panels, they're very beautiful. And, everybody's going with the aesthetic these days. So I feel like it adds to the beauty that is outside.
Hey guys, welcome again to the Sustainable Solar Podcast. Once again here with Monica Ibacache. And let's dig in a little bit more about what actually permaculture is. Just elaborate more on that whole industry.
So permaculture design is a design system that's based on how nature designs itself. It's guided by principles, design principles and ethics. And I like to say that it comes with a toolbox. So if I'm teaching, I'll give you an example. If I'm teaching children how to design, we talk about our ethics, care for the earth, care for people, design for abundance, fair share, don't take more than what you need. And then we have our design principles and we get into, if we're going to design something, what are we going to put into our design? And that's when we pull out the toolbox. So one of the things in the toolbox, which is why I was excited to come and be here with you today, is solar power.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I have my own thoughts, but I really want to hear from you as far as why is this so important in today's day and age?
Woo! Yes. Well, let's see. We're in a very special time in history. climate disruption is becoming more and more apparent to more and more people. Obviously, some people have already been on the front lines of it. We already have climate refugees. New York City in particular got hit really hard almost 10 years ago with a hurricane. And things are speeding up. And I believe that if we're designing for the future, if we're trying to understand what's happening, if we're looking at solutions that seem applicable and realistic, then permaculture design has a lot to offer.
Yeah, and I know as we were talking earlier, you mentioned just about basically on news, right? There's so much negative information about all of the things that are going wrong with climate change and just things in general, right? But they don't really talk as much about the things that are going well, right? From your perspective, what are some of the things that you see that are actually happening from a positive standpoint, from just the sustainable standpoint for our whole world?
Yeah. Well, yes. So I think one of the things that learning about permaculture did for me was it gave me a lot of hope. I didn't know that there were sustainable solutions. I knew like a little bit. I knew that composting was good, recycling was good. I knew that solar power was like, the path in the future, but I didn't really know a lot more. So when I got to permaculture and I started learning how to design, I was introduced to this whole cadre of like applications and techniques that I didn't even know existed. And it made me very excited because there are places where these things are happening. And a big part of what motivated me to do this work is I wanted to spread the good news, because generally bad news is what sells and good news doesn't get passed around as much. Permaculture design is ecological restoration, like it's used a lot in ecological restoration projects when greening the desert. So there's an expansion of Sahara Desert, and I have multiple friends who are working to help stop the spread of the desert. Deserts are natural ecological systems, but sometimes they are man-made as well, and there's a lot of work being done on that front. There's a lot of ways to use the ways that Mother Nature designs itself and heals itself. And when we learn about them, we can use it to bring soil back to life, to rejuvenate farmlands. There's a lot of different ways.
Got it. And that was more from a global standpoint. But what would you say is maybe like one of the biggest challenges that you have teaching permaculture to students in the New York City area? Like, what's the biggest challenge from that standpoint?
In an ideal world, permaculture has a hands-on part to it, and you can be applicable when we're learning how to design. But I feel like it's a lot richer when we have an outdoor area where we can grow things, and the children can have that experience. And New York City doesn't really have a lot of outdoor space, and definitely not as much outdoor space, gardens, and those kind of things I think really help to deepen the learnings. But we can still, I make it work, but it would be nice to see that, more gardens.
Absolutely. And what's
on school property.
Okay. What's the age range of students that you work with?
So I work with all ages, K through 12, pre-K all the way to 12th grade, and then I also work with college students. The majority of my work, which happens in March, during the growing season of March to August, is with third K through 5 mostly, and then I do my college teachings in the fall and winter. But yeah, it's mostly elementary school. I do work with high school, but if I'm thinking the majority, I have like a high school class, but then I'll have like 8 elementary classes.
Got it. And why do you feel like it's important for the next generation, basically, that's who you're teaching, why do you think it's important for them to know and learn about permaculture?
I believe that it is a tool for sustainable living. I believe that it's a vehicle to bring understandings that might not happen otherwise. In the process of creating a design, you learn about so much in order to make the design happen. And it's just a very, I want to say, relevant and in context way of learning about sustainability.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree because I know we spoke earlier about basically, how specifically in mega cities like New York City, there's a lot of designers, right, architects who really only focus on profits. And they don't really think about the long-term sustainability of just that city, that area, or the effects of what they are building, how it can affect in a negative ways. So for the next generation to learn this early on, our next leaders of tomorrow will kind of go into different fields with a completely different mindset, right? And I think that's huge. So I just want to commend you for doing that, because that's it's huge and it's needed and it's very necessary.
Well, I think that what we're doing is that we're educating the generations that are coming up to be able to think in the ways that they'll need to think to respond to what will be their climate reality. The professional designers now and all of the people who are part of our current economic system are responding to the system. And that system's going to change.
Absolutely.
Right? So the kids coming up are not going to be having the same reality. So let's get them ready for that.
Absolutely. What would you say is your biggest reward? What satisfies you the most from doing what you do?
I love when the kids see the interconnectedness of everything. That just makes me so happy. It can be something like that, or it can be, I was afraid of bees and now I'm not afraid of bees and I think they're really important. Or I used to think worms were disgusting, but then we have an earthworm composting bin and they're fascinated. Or when they tell me that, they went and sat under the tree, with their family and that they really liked that. And maybe before they were afraid to sit on the ground. You have to remember that when we're talking about New York City and something that's so densely populated, your experience of nature is very different.
Absolutely.
And one of the first things I do is I ask, do we have nature in the city? Or I say, what is nature? Do we have nature in the city? Where is it? And in that conversation is where we start to just discuss what do we have? And then who takes care of nature in the city? And the answer is usually well, nobody, right? So I said, okay, well, can we take care of nature in the city? What would that look like? And then we start brainstorming ways that we can do that. In order to protect things, if we want children to be stewards, if we want the stewards of the earth, it helps to have them see that now here in the tree pits in the city, maybe volunteering at a city park or helping to build a garden at their school, because they're going to care and take care of what they know. And if we're waiting for them to get out of the city to care, like when they leave maybe to go to college or they move to another place, I don't think we have to wait that long. I just feel like that it's important for them to see what's all around us. And they get very excited taking care of the tree pits. And it's a wonderful way to make it environmentalism a thing that we can all do.
Absolutely. I know we touched base earlier about permaculture not only being for design specifically around us humans, right? But literally touching on how that affects the bees, as you mentioned, the worms, the other animals, and how it affects everything kind of like collectively. Hearing that from you and understanding my own experience growing up in the city and not understanding why bees were flying around me and trying to sting me, but now thinking from a bigger perspective of how all of these things play a role in our ecosystem. And the fact that you're teaching that from an early age is phenomenal. Could you just elaborate a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I tell them is that we garden for all. I said, do we want to just feed ourselves? And usually kids will be like, well, no, they understand that you have to share. I'm like, well, who else is around? Who else is around in nature? And what would it look like for us to feed everybody? I said, personally, me, I want to feed everyone. I want to garden for all. And then they start to think about that. And once we identify who else is around, what does urban wildlife look like? And why are they here? What do they do? Like, you source all this information from them. And then you talk about, well, what do they eat? Like, and I think the big thing is build it and they will come. And I use, a very simple example of if you go to your friend's house. I know if I go to my friend's house and they don't give me anything to drink or eat, I'm not going to maybe come back. So the idea is that if we are gardening and if we want to feed everyone, because the reality is that animals have a rough time in the city. And I think that that's kind of the entryway to that. But the idea is that if we're feeding the birds, the bees, the butterflies, and we're taking care of everyone, then we need to design for that. And they're very responsive to that because that allows us to have conversations about their roles in the ecosystem and the functions that they play, which is why I get comments later like, I used to be afraid of bees. Now I think they're amazing.
Absolutely. With your organization and the amazing work that you're doing, what would you say is your end goal?
I think that this kind of programming is really necessary everywhere. It lays down the foundation for what is to come and the thinking that will be needed to problem solve for that. So my end goal is that this is kind of programming is available everywhere in all the grades.
But being a little more specific now,
Sure.
How do you feel that solar and storage, right, can actually help that industry?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's so much that solar can do. It's a big part of our designs when we're looking at energy, because one of our principles is use and value renewables, and the sun is renewable. So for us, I think the ways that we use it, or that I like to let the kids know even exists, are, I'm going to get really specific. That's okay, right? Yeah. So then we're talking about, let's say, a community garden. So in a community garden, we generally don't have an electrical hookup. We generally don't have water. So how are we going to meet our needs for energy? And then we brainstorm, what does that look like? What do you need energy for? I personally am a big music person, and I love spoken word and having parties. So we need energy for the speakers and the mics. So let's get a solar panel for that. Maybe we want to have, if we want to be in there at night and we don't want to step on anything, we want to have little solar lights along the pathways. But this is like super micro, and you can go really macro, because if we pull out from the community garden, we look at New York City as a whole, we should have solar streetlights. We should have any of the lights in the park. I live next to Central Park. Like, all of those should be solar. To me, I think, why doesn't my landlord have a solar panel on the roof and that powers all of the lights in the hallway? There's so many ways that solar panel brings us energy that is not as negatively impactful on the environment. And I think it's imperative that we do that. Absolutely. Look that way.
Absolutely. And we're going to take another quick break. Once again, thank you for joining the Sustainable Solar Podcast. And we'll be right back in a few.
Well, I haven't had no problem with it. In fact, I have even bought a couple of extra solar things, even for my yard and for my night lights and stuff like that. So I have really gone solar. I have really gone solar.
Welcome back to the Sustainable Solar Podcast. And as we finish things off with Monica, I just want to ask her, first and foremost, how do you feel about the solar industry?
It gives me hope.
Gives you hope?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I know that it's growing and it's burgeoning, and I think that it's one of the industries that actually has solutions that are applicable for what's happening and what's to come. So for me, the solar industry gives me a lot of hope.
Would you go solar in the future yourself?
If I had a house, I would.
Where do you see the not just the solar industry, but the sustainable industry going in the future? Right, with so many things changing. I know you mentioned a little bit earlier in our conversations about like, political changes. But more from a ground level. Like, where do you see the sustainable industry going in the future?
I think that we're going to be the ones that are probably in some ways more quickly responsive to the changes as they're coming.
Yeah.
Especially on the ground level, because we're able to act a lot quicker, I think, in some ways that maybe governments do. Like, for example, when the hurricane happened, a lot of permaculture people who would say they're permaculturists were involved in a lot of the disaster relief, and so many people were helping. And I know that because of what we learn, it's a natural outlet for what we learn to go into disaster relief. And so I really meant that very specifically in that way.
Got it. And I know you teach like students,
Yes.
From ages, you said K to 12. Where would adults go to get the same information?
Well, I think if people are interested in the permaculture design certificate course, I teach it with Oregon State University, and that's done online. And then I also teach it with Cornell University. And that's one way. If you want to take it to that level, I can also provide you and your audience with resources and places where they can learn more. I tend to focus on this education in the public schools and in the colleges. But there's a lot of information out there, and I can definitely direct you to good information on that.
Absolutely. Because my viewpoint on sustainability, it's not just a job, it's not just a career, it's more of a lifestyle completely. And I really truthfully believe, everyone should really consider going in that direction of sustainability. The earth itself is a resource, right? And I feel like so many people just take advantage and abuse that resource constantly every single day. And there's so many ways to become sustainable, right? From not only from the electricity you use, but the water you use, the clothing you wear, the cleaners you use, creating an ecosystem, not just for us, as you mentioned, but for the animals, the plants, like just so much out there. And I feel like in a place like New York City specifically, the community in New York City is so unaware of that. Most New Yorkers are dealing with the hustle and bustle of life that they kind of can't even think about that. And my thought is if we continue to go that way without having these thoughts in mind, we won't have a beautiful city like New York City to live in anymore, right? And it's very, I feel like it can be very detrimental to our future, But as far as it comes to like solar, what would you think your biggest reason for going solar, and maybe like a homeowner? So like, why would you recommend a homeowner deciding to go solar, or not even a homeowner, right? A commercial building in New York City, or a school even, right? Why would it make sense for these establishments to take advantages of the benefits of going solar?
Well, I think research has shown that the fossil fuels industry is one of the factors for climate disruption, among others. And for us to divest from that is imperative and responsible and realistic. And my hope is that more schools and more commercial buildings and more homeowners make the move to solar, because it aligns with their ethics of not doing harm. And what I love about solar is it's not just about not doing harm, because I think when we look at the world through this, like, oh, just make it less bad. How about we flip it and say, how about we thrive?
Absolutely.
Right? Let's thrive. And to me, divesting from fossil fuels, moving to solar power, using and valuing renewable resources like the sun, it makes sense ecologically, it makes sense financially in the long run, and it makes sense ethically.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just feel like you're doing so much of a great work.
Thank you.
And you know, just with everything that you do, your whole organization, I really think it's amazing. And you know, I want to know, like, what is an ideal client of yours? Like, how can people get in contact with you? How can we help expand your vision to grow so more of the next generation could take advantage of all the insights that you have to provide?
Well, one, people can go to my website, www.beyondorganicdesign.org, and you can sign up for the newsletter. I'll be posting upcoming classes, workshops that we'll be doing online. I do have other offerings that we're in the process of, we'll be announcing. My primary work, which would be for online classes, my primary work has been with schools and community centers. And the people that I'm looking for that are ones who want to go beyond gardening. They already have a garden. They want to go beyond gardening, beyond sustainability, beyond organic. It's that idea that they want to go beyond these individual things to the bigger picture and help show the interconnectedness of life, because it's about connection. Whether it's connecting with ourselves, like I did sitting in that forest in Alaska, which is what I really, really needed, or if it's about connecting with community. And we are intimately connected to nature. And it's a false belief that we can separate those. So let's take care of what supports us so it can support us.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Once again, guys, this is the end of the Sustainable Solar Podcast with our amazing guest, Monica Ibacache. And we definitely look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Please check her website out, her information as well. And once again, look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Please hit the subscribe and hit that bell to be informed about more videos just like this. If you like this video, please like, comment, and share. We would definitely love to hear your thoughts. Take care and have a bright day.